Welcome to Truth and Nothing But, episode 31, BLM Money. Where is it? This episode includes Dan Calloway. The link to the full video is in the description. Like and subscribe there. Peace.
OCO everyone.
OCO everyone.
My wife and I just wanted to bring this conversation to the forefront here on my channel because I'm not too sure if it's getting a lot of news recognition due to the fact that they are associated with certain companies that we're going to be going over here. But we're going to be reading from this article, actually a couple of articles, and we're going to provide more information or give our take on it here either way. Now, this is dealing with the Black Lives Matter organization. And according to Fox News, the article dated April 12th says, Black Lives Matter scandal. ABC, CBS, and NBC avoid shocking report of group's $6 million mansion purchase. It says here that the three broadcast networks are turning a blind eye towards a growing scandal plaguing the Black Lives Matter organization. And I'm reading this from the article itself. A stunning report from New York Magazine last week revealed that the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation had bought a 6,500 square foot mansion in Southern California with cash in October 2020, following months of the civil unrest sparked by the murder of George Floyd. Now, that's interesting to note that this happened months after the George Floyd's murder, because during that time they were campaigning like how they normally do. They'll campaign really hard as if they're in support of trying to get justice for so-called black people. And, you know, they demand justice for the families all involved. It wasn't just George Floyd, by the way. That was, you know, a whole bunch of this stuff that we're getting ready to go into, which is more than just scrutiny. I'm just really going to state the facts here. But it was other deaths of so-called black people like Breonna Taylor that the organization Black Lives Matter sought to take advantage of. But to go back to what I was saying, so they purchased a 6,500 square foot mansion with cash. And remember, they were asking everybody for donations. And of course, I already went over this before, but we're going to go over this again because new information has developed. Like even this article is stating it's not being broadcasted. So we're going to broadcast it the best way that we can. And I'm going to add more to that later on. But Han, you said it was something that you wanted to say too?
Yes. I think the way that it's perceived as if this organization is taking money and using it, of course, in the wrong way or whatever. When you think of the Black Lives Matter organization, of course, you're thinking that they're going to do something in the community. You're thinking that they're going to do something politically. But what people must remember about this organization and organizations like this is that it's a charitable foundation, okay? Mm-hmm. That means it's a charity, and a donation is a gift. So you have to understand that when people give gifts, there's nothing else attached to it. So when you're donating to these organizations and you're expecting to receive something from it, they don't owe you anything. Whatever you gave, you didn't give it and it was stated you're going to receive a service or a product in response to what you gave.
Well, here's the thing about that, and it's interesting that you point that out because that is right and exact. But as far as the organization is concerned, they did make promises, like even on their website, of what they're going to do, what their objectives are, what their agendas are. And a lot of it was to build the community back up, helping people, assisting people, spending this money in the correct way where it benefits so-called black people.
But isn't this the same thing that presidential candidates and other government officials are doing when they're making these promises? Yep. And you have people that's donating, backing them and backing their campaign. What are they getting in return? It's right, the same thing.
It's the exact same thing. And what allows them to get over on people is the fact that they don't have to be transparent.
That's correct.
You know, and a lot of people were thinking that they had to be. And I was trying to warn people about this. Don't spend your money with these type of organizations or hand them donations because they're not going to do anything for you. Like, for example, Michael Brown Sr., Lisa Simpson, and Samira Rice, which is, the father of Michael Brown and the mothers of Samira Rice and Richard Richer, have complained that they haven't seen a penny from Black Lives Matter. Now, Michael Brown Sr. released a video back in 2020 asking for money, while the two mothers called for the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation and others to stop capitalizing on their tragedy, stating, quote, "We don't want nor need y'all parading in the streets accumulating donations, platforms, movie deals, etc. off the death of our loved ones, while the families and communities are left clueless and broken," they wrote in a statement. "Don't say our loved ones' names, period. That's our truth," end quote. And I'm sure that wasn't even broadcast to the public. The families were complaining.
I think they're totally correct with their complaints because they are profiting off of the tragedies of these families, and that's just not right. So to even take this back to what we were just speaking about when I mentioned the gift situation, Black Lives Matter has been around since 2013.
Right.
And this was in response to what happened with Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman.
Right.
So we can see from 2013 all the way up, even if we put it back 2 years ago to 2020, what they have done for the community or what they have done financially in response to all of these things taking place. We can look at it back then to see what they were going to do in 2021 and 2022 before that even happened, before this situation that they're calling a scandal even came about. Because what have they done? Okay, what have they done politically or financially since 2013?
Absolutely nothing. They didn't do a thing but sell people hope and handed out t-shirts and hats. And it's crazy because all of these giant corporations and mayors of Washington, D.C. and other places like that, especially a lot of Democrats who, were involved and probably getting paid for this. Everybody latched onto this thing as if it was going to make a change. And the only change that they made was in their own pockets.
Now, I wonder if any of this information would have even came up if that GOP lawmaker didn't call for the Department of Justice investigation. Will we even be finding out any of this information?
Oh, let me mention that. It says in the article that GP lawmakers have begun calling on the Justice Department to investigate the politically powerful nonprofit. However, ABC, CBS, and NBC have not addressed the brewing controversy on their morning or evening newscasts since the story broke last Wednesday.
And you know that the GOP are the Republicans, okay? So they're trying to get at Black Lives Matter because they're involved with the Democrats.
Right.
Now, the question that came to my mind is, why is it that they need a Department of Justice investigation? And what would that particularly do?
I mean, it's not going to get anybody fired or it's not going to get anybody arrested. Yeah, what are they going to do? Because what can they do? It's a nonprofit organization. And on top of that, according to these reports, some of these purchases were made through other LLCs associated with this nonprofit. So what can they do? I mean, they can't really do anything. These people gave them donations and they could do what they want to do with it. Realistically speaking, I mean, what law did they break?
Okay, well, actually, they can apply, this investigation can apply some type of criminal prosecution, possibly. But to who? I don't know who. I don't think we know who at this moment, because according to the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Inspector General, criminal and civil cases, they have special agents that will investigate alleged violations of fraud, abuse, and integrity laws that govern Department of Justice employees, operations, grantees, and contractors. Is the Black Lives Matter movement a part of the Department of Justice or any of their chapters? Because they have so many chapters right now all across the U.S. And the Black Lives Matter Global Foundation Network is basically what they're talking about a lot within this information.
Yeah.
So that means they're globally at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the way to even Canada was complaining in another article that I have that I'll probably bring up by the Daily Signal, dated April 12, 2022. The Washington Examiner's Andrew Kerr had broke several stories on the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation that have not been matched by the bigs. One of them revealed earlier this year that the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation had also spent $8 million on a Toronto mansion that had been the headquarters of the Communist Party of Canada. The revelation has angered Canadian supporters. Quote, for Black Lives Matter Canada to take money from Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation for a building without consulting the community was unethical. Canadian Black Lives Matter activists Sarah Jama and Sarah Sudi said in a statement quoted by Kerr in January. So yeah, they were involved in Canada as well.
All of this that they're bringing attention to right now, okay, and putting in the forefront media-wise, this is just for the year 2020.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Why aren't they concerned with any of the previous years? Why
That's a good question.
Only 2020 that's the concern? Were they not making as much previously? Were they not buying property previously? What was going on? Because I think that's a bit much to just put all the emphasis on this particular matter for this particular year. If they have been involved in so many things since 2013, and what came to my mind is, I'm gonna be honest, Black Lives Matter organization to me is a up-to-date NAACP, because where the NAACP will be stepping in, it seems like Black Lives Matter is now stepping in for many of these cases that's occurring against Niji.
To me, they don't have the Niji's best interest in mind based on their track record stemming all the way back to 2013. They're not interested in so-called Black lives. They're just interested in making money for themselves and making money for others. Say it again?
Yeah, it's a political push. They're interested in the push of other political movements.
So it's a political pool because they pulling in.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? And they're doing it not only for the Democrats, but those that support the Democrats. Because I can recall when Facebook and Twitter was getting on everybody that was getting on Black Lives Matter, and it was shutting them down. I mean, even YouTube has suppressed a couple of things that was dealing with Black Lives Matter when people mentioned it on their YouTube channels. So big tech is involved. So they're backed basically by large corporations after they made themselves a large corporation over the years. And what's really sad here is that a lot of our people felt for that. Like they weren't taking a closer look at what was going on with this so-called Black Lives Matter situation. They just thought it was going to be relating to them because it says Black Lives Matter. And then the media ran with it. The media was running with it. And remember they had a couple of organizations like Blue Lives Matter for the police. And then what was the white one? And I believe it was called White Lives Matter. I mean, whatever, for some Caucasians, you know, but the whole thing is that it's a gimmick.
I just want to read something that was posted on this website about the donors to Black Lives Matter, okay?
Okay.
This was influencerwatch.org. They put some information about Black Lives Matter that deals with their mission, their organizational structure, leadership, financials, etc. And so I saw under the donors that they stated that organizations that donated to the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation through its former fiscal sponsor, Thousand Currents, between 2015 and 2019 include the Novo Foundation, W.K. Kellogg Foundation, and Borellis Philanthropy. In 2016, the Washington Times reported that the Ford Foundation had partnered with Borellis Philanthropy to create the Black-led Movement Fund with a goal of raising $100 million. The Black-led Movement Fund, in turn, provided funding to the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation several times since 2016. if their goal was to raise 100 million, what was that 100 million for?
Right.
And then they donated several times. What were they expecting Black Lives Matter to do with that money?
Man, wow. And that's just a part of it, because of course later on I'm going to play a couple of things that I did. I did my own investigation into them, and several other people have done research on these, especially this particular organization. We noticed how it was backed by a multi-billionaire, and it's just odd to me that people are not catching on. If they want to stir the pot, they need a spoon, a big spoon. Okay, so that big spoon is going to be either a multi-millionaire or a billionaire.
Oh, that's true. That's so true.
It won't ever fail. And that's bringing up these grassroots organizations each time, especially when it's being politically driven. Man, so many people are unaware of this situation, but I'm glad that we're bringing this to the forefront, because still to this day, people are falling for it.
I think the reason why that so many of these millionaires, billionaires, and so many people are donating to Black Lives Matter is because it's a 501c3.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you are donating to organizations like this, that's going to be a tax write-off for many of these companies, because it's like you're donating to charity.
Technically, that's what you're doing. You know what? I never really looked at it like that. So these big, multimillionaires or billionaires are using these particular organizations like Black Lives Matter technically as their own tax write-off.
Exactly. And so I also wanted to mention something about 501c3s, because on this particular website, influencewatch.org, there's a question mark beside 501c3 in response to talking about Black Lives Matter, because that's their tax exempt status. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found interesting was this question mark says that a 501c3 is a religious, educational, charitable, scientific, literary, testing for public safety to foster national or international amateur sports competition or prevention of cruelty to children or animals organizations. So you could be listed under any one of these things to be a 501c3. But we all know, or assume that Black Lives Matter was a 501c3 for the prevention of cruelty to children or animals, because they came in as a response to what happened to Trayvon Martin.
Right. Who's a child. Yeah.
Okay. But according to the IRS, whatever label you come in under, that's what you have to stay as to keep your tax exempt status. So we would assume that Black Lives Matter came in under the label of prevention of cruelty to children or animals organizations. But when I see that we have testing for public safety as an area that you can come in under, and the way that they've handled things like the George Floyd situation, because he's not a child.
Right.
That just made me think, which 501c3 status are they really falling under?
This organization lacks transparency. And to bring that back up, it says that the tension between the national organization and its local chapters grew during the 2020 era. Okay, it says the foundation launched Black Lives Matter Grassroots, a $6.5 million fund in which local chapters could apply for grants up to $500,000. According to MSN, local organizers said then they had no knowledge that such a fund was being created, and that they were not asked for input about the appointment of Colors as executive director of the network. This, they said then, was just another example of the organization's lack of transparency. Quote, "This is not a new conversation we're having. It's one that keeps coming up," Ariel Lipscomb, an organizer with Black Lives Matter Denver, said in 2020. "We've consistently asked for accountability. We've consistently asked for transparency. We've consistently asked for shared power and for the actions of BLM GNF to reflect the work that we do." End quote. So a lot of the chapter runners are disagreeing with the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation as well, which was headed at that time before she stepped down here recently last year. She was running it during, the year 2020, which was Colors. The lady I'm probably about to post back up right here so y'all can know who I'm talking about. So somebody was definitely pulling strings with her because she wasn't the one stirring the pot. She was the one making sure the eye was turned up to a particular heat in order for it to never stay cold. And then to bring that back up, and what you guys are going to see later on in this video, yes, she eventually stepped down just last year as one of the co-founders and one of the head runners of the main organization, Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. So you know something is up. And where's all of this money going still? Now we know some of it, if not all of it, but some of it is going to Democratic parties and their affiliates. You know, everybody else involved, probably big tech and everything like that. But once again, there's no transparency, so we could just assume. And I guess that's why, the Republicans are asking for the Justice Department to get involved. But at the same time, the Republicans are doing the same thing, right? They just don't have a Black Lives Matter organization, but don't they have organizations that ask for donations?
I'm pretty sure they do. I'm pretty sure.
So it's just one telling on the other.
Exactly. They're going back and forth right now.
They're going back and forth. Oh, and here's another reason why they probably brought this up again. Because here come November. November's coming up, so they trying to stir the pot again. Apparently, they was thinking, there could be some Democrats moving around, making some moves that they didn't like. So they want to put them in a negative light right now. Started early. That's a good political move. And that's the reason why, according to another article, was it the Daily Signal? Let me make sure. One of these articles were indicating that a memo was being passed around. Yeah, it was the Daily Signal. It says reporter Sean Campbell, who said on social media that the breaking story had been very hard on him, wrote that after he contacted the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, its, quote, leaders circulated an internal strategy memo with possible responses to the ones, that we're talking about as far as they're buying up the California mansion and everything like that. Ranging from, quote, can we kill the story? To, quote, our angle needs to be to deflate ownership of the property, end quote. So they're all in this together and they just want to back themselves up. And one last desperate attempt at obfuscation, Shallow Maya Bowers, I may have mispronounced that, a Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation board member, said in an email that the organization had bought the California mansion, quote, to serve as housing, as studio for recipients of the Black Joy Creators Fellowship, which provides recording resources and dedicated space for Black creatives, end quote. And this article states that the fellowship wasn't announced until the following morning, and not when they first purchased the California mansion, but when this news first broke. So they're trying to back themselves up either way they can. And that's the excuse that they bought the house basically for a big studio. Oh, man. But look, once again, would they have all of this money if it wasn't for your donations? No. So with all of that being said, what do you think about the Justice Department and their take on this? What do you think they could get them for? Fraud? Because the reason why I'm saying that, hun, is because where is it?
Yeah, but who would they be being fraudulent to?
That's what I'm saying.
Because, the Department of Justice, are they being fraudulent to them? Is this a government organization? Like, I'm not understanding how they are even involved.
Yeah, it's just like, I think they're just trying to put them in some bad light, but I really don't see anything that they did wrong. They actually did what I'm talking about as far as something that was criminal. To me, I could be wrong, but they're a nonprofit. They, got their LLCs outside of their nonprofit to make these purchases in cash. I don't understand. They accept donations as a nonprofit charity.
I just think that there's a misunderstanding of what this organization is about. That's all. People are thinking that this organization is for one thing and supposed to be one way, and it's actually not that at all.
But they got to think about that, just like you said earlier. What political campaign benefited us as a people? I mean, whether if it was from a president to a governor to any politician, which campaign benefited us the most? Or which campaign benefited us in general? None of them. None of them. It's almost like we're watching a real-time soap opera, because that's basically all it is. I mean, especially when it comes to these political parties battling against each other back and forth. But I think what people have to realize is that these people, or these organizations rather, are not what they portray themselves out to be. They're not for the people, they're for the people's money. They're not for social justice or anything like that, or anybody's lives. They're there for their own benefit. They're there for putting money in their pockets and whoever's associated with them. And that will be your donations. And you can't do nothing about it because of the fact that it's a donation. You gave it to them, you donated to them, they can keep it. When it comes to these billionaires, I think the reason why the billionaires were involved with funding these organizations, not only was it because it's a tax write-off for them, but it will be a much bigger tax write-off for them if they get other organizations involved to donate to these charities, so they could be used as a tax write-off as well. See, for example, if we donate to a charity right now, we can use that as a tax write-off. We could literally write that off to any charity. So if they're being used as a pool like that, then yeah, they want to continuously fund that and keep it going and make sure, it has some publicity, and so it can be popularized as one of the biggest charity pools that can be used by large and middle corporations, middle-sized corporations. Go ahead.
It also can be used with these companies that we're hearing that are the ones that are donating to Black Lives Matter. They can be used as a group for influence. So now they are infiltrated, and you have the video of the guy saying the organization is being controlled by teachers' unions.
Yeah.
And politicians, basically, Democrats.
Yeah, a bunch of Democrats. Yeah, I'm going to play that video after this.
Yeah, so the reason why he's saying that is because if you get these large donations, now you have to do what they tell you to do.
That's correct. You're up under their control.
So they're looking at the influence that Black Lives Matter has, the support that they garnered from the people. I think it's above money. With the influence and support, now you can really direct them to put out information or do certain things that you really want them to do. And you're sitting in the background because it's already been paid off.
Yeah, they got to do it because the billionaires got involved or other multimillionaires got involved, and they're funding it. So you got to do what they say. That's right.
Another thing that I wanted to say was, according to this Fox News article published February 16, 2022, Biden's Supreme Court nomination, advisor on Black Lives Matter board of directors, despite White House distancing from defund movement.
Oh, wait, what? Go ahead. I'm sorry for cutting you off. Go ahead.
Biden's Supreme Court nomination is the advisor on Black Lives Matter board of directors.
Interesting.
You know what? That is very interesting, because I said earlier that the Black Lives Matter movement reminded me of the NAACP.
Yeah.
That's the same thing that happened with their Supreme Court nomination with Thurgood Marshall. He was a part of the NAACP.
Man.
It's just an up-to-date for this generation type of organization, because this generation isn't relating to NAACP. And they had all of those stand-ins and boycotts and marches. It's the same thing that the Black Lives Matter movement is doing right now.
People are not looking at it as a political move and what they got going on. They're not looking out for our people's interests. They're just using it to their advantage because they know some of our people will fall for it, if not the majority. And they'll, cling on to it just because it has the term Black Lives on it. And that's sad. So for those of you that didn't get a chance to see my previous videos on Black Lives Matter, the organization itself, for whatever reason, okay, we're not even going to mention all of that here. What I'm going to do is play an up-to-date version. I'll add in a few things that's new, and you'll be able to get caught up on everything that we have just recently mentioned, and on top of what happened throughout the previous years, and how it's nothing but a political scam. Again, We can't allow this to continue to happen, people. We got to do something about it. The number one thing we have to do is step up. Not only just speak about it, but be about it. We don't need outsiders speaking for us when we could create our own. And we don't have to be funded by foreigners that are billionaires that don't have our best interests when we can fund ourselves. I mean, look at it. You funded Black Lives Matter. Now they're probably $1 billion corporation, nonprofit corporation. So we could do it for ourselves. So without further ado, I'm gonna just go ahead and play the videos right now. Leave your comments down below and tell me what you think. Say it all. Don't hold nothing back. Let's go.
What's your thought on Black Lives Matter?
What is it? What do you mean?
The idea is that there's this movement called Black Lives Matter, thinking that the rest of America didn't seem to understand that Black Lives Matter.
It just sounds weird. I didn't know that you put a name on. It's not a name. It's not whatever. It's somebody got by police and for up reason.
Do you separate yourself from it?
I don't feel connected to a damn thing that ain't got nothing to do with me. If you do, you crazy. You.
In an unexpected move, the leader of Black Lives Matter St. Paul is leaving the activist organization.
I'm not going to put the blame solely on Black Lives Matter, but I will say that they're being duped right now.
Rashad Turner, who led Black Lives Matter St. Paul for nearly 2 years, says he is leaving his position after the National Black Lives Matter organization joined forces with the NAACP to call for a moratorium on charter schools. Turner, who has been an educator for more than 7 years, says he cannot stand by their decision.
It was sort of bittersweet to leave that, but I'm a person of integrity, and that call for a moratorium on charter schools I think is just wrong and misleading to a lot of people.
The NAACP and the Movement for Black Lives claim charter schools exacerbate segregation. In a statement, the Movement for Black Lives says school privatization strips Black people of the rights to self-determine the kind of education their children receive. Turner says public schools not only have a bad record of staff assaulting Black students, but offer less options for Black families.
I think that this moratorium really takes away the student voice, takes away the parent voice.
Maybe I'm being too soft, but anybody who can talk, America's woke corporate structure into sending close to $100 million on the basis of that lame rap kind of gets my respect, in a way.
She has my respect because she's unapologetic in her approach. She's telling you what she is. She's a Marxist. So Marxists steal money from other people and they enrich themselves until the people that they stole from are poor. And so she has stolen money from other people on the pretext of a lie that is Black Lives Matter. And she's enriched herself and she's brought 4 homes. I mean, you have to kind of appreciate the honesty. She's not hiding by any means, and so, yeah, I tend to agree with you here. She's a communist through and through, and she's been unbelievably unapologetic in her approach.
Co-founder of Black Lives Matter, Patrisse Cullors, says she's stepping down. This comes following what she calls a smear campaign from a right-wing group and other Black organizers. Cullors has been at the head of the BLM Global Network Foundation for nearly 6 years and will no longer be the executive director of the movement's foundation. She says she's leaving to focus on other projects, including the upcoming release of her second book and a multi-year TV development deal with Warner Brothers. Recently, she was accused of using money from the foundation to purchase a Southern California home.
Yes, Patrisse Cullors, she has not only been at the helm of Black Lives Matter for more than 6 years, but she was one of the 3 co-founders, and she's going to be leaving to focus on her book and TV deals. This is a woman who identifies as a trained Marxist, Rowan, and as we know, BLM, if you actually look at their charter and what they push, they're unashamedly Marxist, anti-capitalist, but we've also found out that she has accumulated quite an impressive multi-million-dollar property portfolio, and BLM continues to enjoy support from all those dim-witted corporates who back a company that is anti-capitalist. It's bizarre, but here we are.
Okay, let me tell you about Rashad Turner. He is from Minneapolis. His father was and killed when he was 2 years old. He was raised by his grandparents. He went to college, first in his family. Here's a picture of him. He earned his master's. He said education was a pathway to success. And then in 2015, he started a local chapter of Black Lives Matter. He said because he does believe Black Lives Matter. But he said after a year on the inside, he saw little concern for the desire to rebuild Black families. Listen to him. He was on Fox and Friends First earlier with Jillian and Todd.
How can Black Lives Matter
if black minds don't matter. If we had 90 million, heck, children would be up here reading, our schools would be better. But let me add something here. When you think about that 90 million, where it comes from, BLM has been co-opted. They've been co-opted by teachers unions. These teachers unions own the Democrats, they own BLM, and teachers unions, in my opinion, they kill our children's hopes and dreams. So if Black lives really matter, we must start in that classroom. Minnesota is 94% white, yet they walk around acting like they're so woke that they understand what's best for black children, right? But they own our education system.
You're doing something that many people haven't done, black women at the forefront. That is hard to comprehend, that's hard to understand, but I promise you that what I have done, with what other BLM leaders have done in the organization, and what we're trying to do is get black people free.
Color's last day with the BLM Foundation will be tomorrow.
Was first broken by New York Magazine, which has a long reputation of being a very conservative magazine that goes after Democrats, right?
Yeah, always, constantly. I don't know what kind of New York Magazine your paper boy drops off, but I have a different one, John. But having said that, that's significant because they don't wake up every day wondering how to take down a Democratic cause.
I was kidding.
Yeah, I know. Black Lives Matter comes out and rolls out in 2020 in a major way, and it's not only millions of dollars. They evidently have 60 million left. There's a lot of people who believe they've done the math, including Professor Wilfred Riley, who's on One Nation this weekend, and they think it's more like $10 billion that they have. The question is, where is this money? Are they in individual chapters? And how dare you use money without explaining why you need a $5 million mansion, like you need another one in Canada, another one in Atlanta, and you do this, and when asked about this, you're called a racist for inquiring, which I think people have to just stop knuckling under when you're wrongly called something like this, and the New York Post wrote about this story today. Yep. And then when asked, why weren't you more transparent? Well, we were doing repairs on the house. Really? You're doing repairs on the house? There's no record of repairs on the house back to 2017. Evidently, they replaced the roof, which happens in the past. Think about all the causes all this money could be going to. Where's the corporate outrage from Nike and others who wrote big checks, the NBA and NFL who write big checks, individuals who give $5 or $10? Why aren't they angry like they would if this was a military organization? If this was feeding the poor, or an evangelist who thinks people think they're going to be saved if they just give that evangelist some money, that ends up buried in scandal. Where is the accountability here? Where's the curiosity?
Well, Brian, you mentioned accusations of racism. I thought it was very interesting. Sean Campbell, who wrote this piece for the New York Magazine, this is what he says about himself. He never thought he'd be attacked that way because he is a black man raised by a single black mother and has actually had police guns, he said, trained on him at one point. So he said this was one of the hardest pieces he ever had to do because of where the facts took him. And to then on the backside be called racist and sexist was a surprise to him.
Can I give you my opinion on this? Especially after George Floyd, a lot of people we talk to want to help. How do we fix this? How do we move this country even further forward? Now, we're not perfect. We try to be, which I think is admirable. Most states go, this is the deal. This is our country. Leave it. We always say, let's get it better. So people want to know how to help. Well, they go to this organization. When St. Peter's takes off their shirt after the miraculous run in the NCAA, it says Black Lives Matter. When you looked at the court of the NBA, and you see Black Lives Matter on the side, they say, Mr. and Mrs. America want to help. And they go, I can count on that organization. Let's give it to them. And they'll be siphoning off locally. And now we're finding out the worst possible thing for charities in general and for nonprofits, that the money seems to be, at the very least, upon first blush, to be wasted on somebody's lifestyle, which makes us all feel like we're duped and hurts the cause, because there are really things that need to be done to help every community, especially the black community.
California Congressman Darrell Issa wants the Department of Justice to open up an investigation into this because there's something a little unusual about this deal. That house sold for $3.1 million. And then 6 days later, BLM bought it in a cash deal for $5.8 million. They used an LLC that was registered under an office that happens to be the same office as the Perkins Coie law firm here in Washington, D.C., which we all know from the unverified dossier about Russia and Donald Trump. And so there's a question as to, well, wait a minute, why did the price go up almost $3 million in 6 days? And what happened to that money?
If you look at their website, they don't look like a company or a corporation or a nonprofit or charity that's out to help the black community. They look like a company that's really married to Marxism, hates the nuclear family, not too fond of America. So I'm not too sure that really reflects African Americans in America. I'll let them speak for themselves with various charities, but I think it's time to take a second look. And why wouldn't there be scrutiny? Remember the scrutiny on the Tea Party by the IRS? I don't think they ever had $60 million hanging out in the bank, believe me. I know some of them. They never had this type of organization. People are well-meaning. I'll bring up something else I think is important, is that there's a lot of corporations that got to put the pressure on this organization to come clean. And also I want to know how much money is going to go to Democratic causes and political events. Because are you giving money to help the black community? And are you really helping the next Democratic candidate, big and small? I think that should be something that should be documented somewhere, don't you?
Well, Brian, we will take your advice and we will look into it.
Look, 100 years after 100 years, they done lied to us about this and that. Told us all we from Africa and made fiction characters turn into facts. Harriet Tubman, then it was not. Knowing goddamn well that trick was capped. My wife and I wrote a book about it, and it's book with knowledge, evidence, and fact. My other book got them haters shook, cause it's helping my people take a closer look at their backgrounds in the background, showing my people where they supposed to look. Showing my people where they get it from, where they hit it from, all sorts of angles. When it comes to this research, you must please first, don't trust strangers. Find out all on your own is what I highly recommend and suggest. And if you looking for uncensored content by me, I highly recommend you the best, which is my website at the link you see just across the screen. Don't let it miss you, I make it simple. I double down on that black and white, it's too official. Throughout today's society of America, the racial divide has been a major issue to resolve when everyone has been indoctrinated with believing that different races of people actually exist, instead of knowing that simply all living people are humans or electrical beings. And even though many people have spotted this common issue before, no one seems to bother with questioning who created the term race exactly, along with its one-directional motives and long-term manipulative agendas. Particular groups of people are not cognizant of the self-inflicting wounds they cast upon themselves when allowing strangers to undermine their true identities by inadvertently accepting a stranger's set of beliefs that are disguised as political correctness.
What do you think, Morgan? Is this political correctness gone too far?
Yeah. I mean, we have a tendency to do that anyway. I mean, you get politically correct. Stuff happens that you don't want to happen. I all of a sudden became an African. Correctness, African American. I'm not African. I'm not African. I'm not African. I'm not African. I'm not African.
Black History Month you find ridiculous.
Why? You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No, well, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism on
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man. Yep. And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man. A black man. A black man. A black man.
Political correctness stands as an idea or concept that forces public opinion to be prejudicially generalized, which mentally alters natural human perceptions and beliefs, dangerously influencing the beginning, the climax, and the conclusions of the public's everyday life. Obviously, this type of discussion is needed and long overdue, and it also gets a lot deeper when you critically think about it for a while, especially when you're the type that's surfing for solutions to the problems that you see surrounding you versus focusing on what's taking place right in front of you. For example, each generation arises a new set of movements, wars, riots, and even the creation of bills or laws, just to name a few things. And it wouldn't be hard to find that there are particular people that have been chosen or hired to be utilized as symbols or public figures whose duty is to influence public acceptance of well-decorated misinformation by way of fear-mongering distractions that are filled with tons of contradictions. These contradictions can be easily spotted by the utilitarian methods of critical thinking, researching, and by simply questioning everything well beyond the commonly known morals of a story told to you. The internet was given to us here in America during the 1980s. But really think about that now, because since the internet came into existence during the 1980s, then the same thing applies to its information also, right? During my earliest videos back in the year 2016, I warned everyone about the nonprofit organization called Black Lives Matter. This was at a time where people did not pay any attention to its founders, co-founders, financial aids, and even its overall agendas and guiding principles. On the original Black Lives Matter website, before it was just recently changed, I pointed out how you were able to click on a tab labeled Guiding Principles, which would then take you to another page filled with square-shaped black and yellow colored sub-tabs, in which one of these tabs labeled Black Families stood out to me the most. By clicking on this tab, it gave a statement saying, quote, "We are committed to making our spaces family-friendly and enable parents to fully participate with their children. We are committed to dismantling the patriarchal practice that requires mothers to work double shifts, that require them to mother in private, even as they participate in justice work." End quote. Did you notice that there was no mention of a father, nor of a heterosexual male for that matter? And that's even throughout this entire original Black Lives Matter website. And did you also notice the avatar associated with this tab? 2 children figures and 1 adult figure equals a so-called black family? Are they promoting empowerment or complete separation here? And then it gets a lot deeper.
I'm not no Black Lives Matter supporter. Like,
you're not?
No, absolutely.
Why not?
Because it's not our movement. This is a movement that was given to us by, George Soros and his fucking boys, because they saw how things were going and they didn't want it to go back to the 60s to where we start having our own organic movements. That was a big fucking problem for them. So let's give the people a movement that we can control. We'll provide them the leaders and all of this type of shit. That's what Black Lives Matter is. Look at the leaders of Black Lives Matter.
Are there leaders of Black Lives Matter?
Yeah.
Who?
Look at these lesbian women who are trying to incorporate their concerns into black people's concerns. Go to the website, look it up. Google George Soros and Black Lives Matter. See what comes up.
Let's look it up.
Okay. And you know, y'all out there, George Soros is a fucking multi-billionaire down with, you know, some of the 12 richest people in the fucking
He raised
world.
$100 million.
Yep.
For the Black Lives Matter Coalition. The funding comes in addition to more than 33 million in grants from top Democratic Party donor George Soros.
That's about, let us give you a movement that we can control, use certain symbolism from the original civil rights movement, like the black, you know, red, black, and green, all these different symbols. We're gonna incorporate that, but only it's gonna be a movement that we control. We decide what the messages are. We decide what the slogans are. You know, what happened to no justice, no peace, and, you know, no peace, no justice. Now it's hands up, don't shoot, fucking I can't breathe, and all these negative affirmations.
And he's absolutely correct. The universe, ancestors, spirits, or God, whatever which one you want to use, listens to what you say out your mouth and how you feel inside. You are the dictator in that sense, not the creator, the dictator. So if you let your words and your actions meet, then it becomes your reality. And that can either be good or bad based upon how you decide what the outcome would be from the very beginning. Before we were introduced to the 3 so-called co-founders of the Black Lives Matter organization, we saw a guy named DeRay McKesson being constantly labeled as the leader of the Black Lives Matter movement. In June of 2016, DeRay's cell phone was hacked by the cyber activist group known as Anonymous, and they publicly posted all of DeRay's private Twitter conversations with Jonetta Elzie, another protest organizer, about their plans to literally disrupt then presidential candidate Donald Trump's campaign rallies to cause a stir that will bring about martial law, causing Barack Obama to stay in office as president for a 3rd term. In a private direct message, Jonetta asked DeRay, quote, "Have you spoken with Ms. Lynch recently about the plan for the summer and fall leading up to the elections?" And DeRay responded by saying, quote, "We spoke 2 weeks and they want us to start really pushing how racist Trump is now, instead of waiting so the others can start getting the protesters ready to shut both conventions down." And then he goes on to say, "We have to make sure that we use our voices to keep people disrupting Trump all summer and through the fall so martial can be declared." End quote. The lady that they were referring to as their contact was the U.S. Attorney General at that time, Loretta Lynch of the Democratic Party.
I had my phone hacked, so I'm on a panel and I have 2 phones. And one phone is like, please activate your phone. And I'm like, I've never seen that before. Like, please activate. So I turn it off, turn it back on. And what it came out to is that if you have Verizon, the last 4 digits of your social is your PIN for your Verizon account. So somebody hacked, got my social. They called, they changed my SIM card over the phone, which I didn't know you could do. And then they reset all my passwords so that the like code to go back into your account goes to a device they can control. And then it takes me like all day to get back in my phone. You know, it's just like, it's a nightmare.
Isn't it quite odd? Out of all of the public interviews that DeRay McKesson and Loretta Lynch have participated in, between the time of his phone being hacked and beyond, that not one time was either of them asked about these leaked messages? And speaking of the Democratic Party, did you know that the KKK was a political creation of the Democrats? Oh, and here's another thing I wanted to point out. According to the History Channel, quote, the KKK engaged in against African Americans and white Republicans at night, employing intimidation, destruction of property to achieve its aims and influence upcoming elections. End quote. Now, doesn't that sound all too familiar? Fast forward to today. When you log on to the newly updated Black Lives Matter website, there is a tab that's highlighted blue and labeled Donate. And if you were to click on this tab, it brings up a totally separate website called Act Blue, which is a nonprofit 501c3 funding pool created only by the Democrats, in which this website says that it's only for, quote, Democratic candidates up and down the ballot, progressive organizations, and nonprofits, end quote. As of today, DeRay McKesson is no longer affiliating himself with the Black Lives Matter organization. In this 2018 interview, listen closely to what he details without name dropping as he responds to a popular question concerning the mystery of how he is supported financially.
This issue about money, comes up often, and people think I'm sponsored by Patagonia. I'm not. I'm a customer.
The blue Patagonia vest is definitely controversial. We'll get to that later on the program.
People think I'm sponsored by McDonald's, by Spotify. I don't take money to tweet. And, the reality is that the group of people that I'm closest to, we raised $140,000 in 4 years, which is not a lot of money, especially in the nonprofit community.
Now,
in the book, I actually talk about I name a lot of people that you don't know, but if not for them, there would be no movement, because if not for Ferguson and St. Louis, that created the space. So I'm sensitive to that, and I don't want to invalidate those claims. It is hard to be the brunt of people's frustration. I didn't do it, right? So
there are people who have raised millions in the protests. We just chose not to participate in the nonprofit, that sort of race around money, because we wanted to see, could we make an impact without raising a lot of money?
And even Black Lives Matter affiliate Sean King and his nonprofit organization called Grassroots Law Project with civil rights lawyer Lee Merritt is also under the guise of the Democratic fundraiser Act Blue whenever someone wants to donate to their non-transparent cause. Which should make you ask some questions, like, millions upon millions of dollars have been donated by the public to these orgs, all due to their relatable general plans and public pledges or promises. But where exactly does all of this donated money go after it's accepted by Act Blue on behalf of these organizations? Why are these organizations not so transparent when it comes to the usage of the funds provided to them? Just a day or so after the video of George Floyd's went viral everywhere, you then began to see the hashtag Black Lives Matter trending on every social media site, from your favorite celebrities to Democratic politicians to government officials to even famously known large corporations were all using the hashtag. Was this all done in order to bring attention towards the issue of police brutality and the unfair treatment of the indigenous Nijis of Turtle Island? Or was this all done to bring attention to these large corporations, politicians, government officials, and your favorite celebrities? A distraction is defined as a diversion that prevents someone from giving their full attention to something. But another essential definition of the word distraction is an extreme agitation of the mind or emotions, a mental distress. This is why the American public is easily manipulated and influenced by the compelling events that they see on television and all throughout popular social media sites, emotionally dividing the mindsets of the public under a false sense of racial equality.
We all saw what happened last week. We can't let that happen. Hopefully George is looking down right now and saying there's a great thing that's happening for our country. There's a great day for him. It's a great day for everybody. This is a great day for everybody. This is a great, great day in terms of equality.
I will challenge Trump and ask him to show me where exactly equality exists in today's society of America. And it's not just Trump or the Republicans that will play the let's just brush things off and get along fine and act as if nothing happened type of people. The Democrats have historically acted in this manner as well. Like Joe Biden.
And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap. And I tell you what.
Joe Biden, who was vice president to Barack Obama, don't forget, blatantly telling our people that they are not black if they vote for Trump over him.
I can't do that to white media and black media because my wife has to go on at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
But wait a minute. Wait a minute. So anybody can determine if someone is black or not? Can we say that a person isn't white if they voted for Barack Obama? This exposes that the term black has a totally different meaning than what most may be aware of. For starters, the term black was historically used in conjunction with words that carry a negative connotation, like the term blacklisted, for example, which means blackballed, and blackballed meaning blackmailed. And it works the same way as an officer on his radio sounding off the description of a black male being a suspect in question, or someone they are instructed to lawfully murder, according to what we see nowadays. The term black was famously used by prejudiced people as a derogatory labeling or a racial slur. So, how did our people become defenseless and then later refer to each other as this same label? Should you call yourself black when you can look at your arms right now and see that your skin complexion is actually different shades of the color brown? And before you share your excuse as to the reason why you call yourself black, focus on where that term arises from. Our people have never referred to each other as black in a historical sense. And why is that so important? Because of the spells of the English language. Meaning that the words you speak will directly impact or determine your reality by way of affirmation. And that will work both ways for an individual, meaning that they can speak good or bad things into their existence. Very similar to how karma works. So by speaking the spells of the English language, you must be very careful not to inadvertently speak death or any forms of negativity over your life. For example, the etymology of the word black means colorless or the absence of color, which can be logically understood by you just simply cutting all of the lights out. Then you would only see darkness, which affiliates the word black with direct synonyms like missing, lacking, unavailable, absent, and non-existent. Now, this is very important to note because this means that by you chanting Black Lives Matter, for example, You are inadvertently denouncing your existence subconsciously, as if you're chanting, "No lives matter." Or when you say black people, you're not referring to the skin color of someone who is actually the color brown. You're inadvertently referencing non-existing people. And it gets a lot deeper on the topic of racial inequality. Because if you are legally claiming or self-identifying as being black, then just ask yourself, what rights or privileges exist right now that were granted or agreed upon for any person or citizen that identifies as being black? Contrary to most popular beliefs and ideologies, the term black has no nationality whatsoever, nor does it really represent a group of people from a particular landmass or state or country. Because if that were the case, then we would all be immigrants from an island called Blackland that carried many tribes of people that called themselves blacks. And that's just not realistic, nor is it even truthful for that matter. So with all of that being said, we can easily determine where the root of the problem resides when it comes to racial inequality. And it starts with us truly identifying ourselves as who we really are, and cease with allowing strangers to label us as if we're their chattel or property, when we are actually their landlords.